Today we're going to be talking about 7 mistakes that hiring managers make and how to avoid them. Hello, I'm Michael Robinson and welcome to my channel. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button and that little bell to be notified of upcoming shows. Today we're talking about 7 mistakes that hiring managers make when hiring new talent and how they can be avoided. And everyone can learn from this. The bottom line is that hiring is a very daunting proposition for most managers, having done so for over 30 years in my life. The process of hiring is like going on a blind date, right? Over and over again until you meet the right person. The need is there to have the right person in place, but you don't want to make a mistake, especially if you've had a bad experience recently or in the near recent past, right? So the idea is that you want to make the right choice with the right person based on the right skill sets and the right personality and also the right salary, because a lot of times you can find somebody who is a great fit, but maybe the salary component is prohibitive for hiring. Managers have to deal with staffing agencies or human resources department, or maybe even getting an approval from their senior manager to hire that next person. They have to put together a description, a compensation plan. How much is that person going to be making? What compensation is that individual going to be given outside of that salary that would make the pot sweet for a potential candidate, right? How many vacation days? How many sick days, what kind of medical compensation you're going to be giving that individual, and other things, right? So the whole compensation is one thing you have to put together. And then you also have to make sure that the compensation is fair compared to what the market is offering and compared to what your staff is being paid. You certainly don't want to bring somebody in making a lot more money than one of your key players in your department, right? So the idea of navigating all of these nuances to come up with this job description is in of itself complicated. So that's number one. Number two is that you have to communicate with either the recruiter or the human resources department in terms of what you're looking for, because a lot of times the nuances cannot necessarily be put in writing. You know, you have to talk about your needs. And somebody who is intuitive or skilled can pick up on those nuances that you're looking for. Not to mention the fact that you have to make time to look at the dozens of resumes coming in, right? And then schedule a time to meet with potential candidates that might fit your need. So all of these things can be time taken away from your core productivity. And most managers want to make sure that they're producing, whether it's in a department or a company, optimally, right? At an optimum level. Whenever something takes you away from that, it can be a little bit disconcerting. So then we meet with candidates. We begin setting up times for meeting with individuals, and then we oftentimes inundated with resumes or candidates, and just kind of like deciding the right person can be challenging, and sometimes you think too long and you think too hard. And then when you make up your mind about hiring somebody, that person is no longer available because another company might have picked him or her up. And you're thinking, why isn't this person interested in working for my company? My company is a big name company. Everybody wants to work for us. Well, maybe not true. So sometimes managers can wait too long to make a decision, and in so doing, you lose out on an absolutely amazing candidate. So you think too long, you think wrong. We're going to talk about 7 mistakes outside of that managers make when hiring that are oftentimes overlooked by most managers. The first mistake that we make as hiring managers is not trusting our instincts. Your instincts are key. You know what you need for your department. You know what skill sets are needed. And you know what that individual who is being interviewed by you brings to the table, because it's either on paper or he or she is verbally speaking it. But there's something else that goes into the equation, right? You have a personality that one has to consider because you want to blend whomever you're bringing into the company with your current infrastructure, your current team. You want to make sure that person can get along with people. That person is a team player. And people reveal themselves, whether they are aware of it or not. But people reveal themselves without knowing. And if you're intuitive enough and if you're paying attention enough, which means when you're interviewing someone, you stop thinking about everything. Stop thinking about what you need to do 20 minutes from now or what you should have done yesterday or whatever conflict you have going on in your department or your company. Your focus should be on that interview, absorbing everything, absorbing the silence. When you ask a question, you need to be listening to how that person does or does not answer. Because a lot of times people are very skilled at avoiding a question. They can work their way around it or over it, and if you're not paying attention, you can miss out on that. So you want to be intuitive, you want to be focused, you want to be centered, you want to be driven, you want to be there, present for that interview. Number 2, be open to negotiating compensation. Because you may have an idea of how much you're willing to pay based on, what your budget has or your company can afford. But that person that you might be bringing in can increase production by a value greater than what you're willing to pay. So you have to look at everything from a business perspective. Maybe you have in mind that you want to pay $75,000 per year for that job. The person may want $80,000 because that's what he or she was making before, or maybe that's what the market is asking for. And it's better to go with someone who is a quality candidate, who checks all the boxes, but who wants a little bit more money than to go with someone who is asking for less, but may not have the skill sets you need and probably wouldn't bring all the tools that you need to make your company shine. So a lot of managers are turned off by negotiating salaries. I say, think about it like a business, negotiate the salary. If the person's asking for more than what you're willing to pay, find a compromise in between. Do not be deterred by that. I've seen too many doors closed on candidates who want to make more money, and the company just turns away from that person because they're asking for too much. But how much is too much if that person is really going to bring quality to your department and an impact to your organization? Number 3, outline the terms of employment on paper. It's one thing to give someone a verbal agreement on the phone. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But always have the terms of employment on paper so there can not be a situation of confusion or misunderstanding later on. I've seen that happening too many times in employment, whereby a candidate misinterprets what the earnings might be or what the compensation in of itself might be. So always outline that on paper so everybody knows what the other is talking about. Number 4, well, maybe I should have said that from the beginning, but pay attention to red flags. Red flags are there in so many cases that we overlook them because we kind of brush them under the carpet because it might have been an anomaly or a misunderstanding. But remember what I said, people reveal themselves very early on in an interview without even knowing, and they reveal themselves in oftentimes what they're not saying to you, or how they handle situations, how they handle certain questions. And listen, I'm not saying that everything is a red flag, but there are red flags that actually hit you in the gut, in the intuition. Remember, I talked about intuition before. So pay attention to the red flags because there can be a difference between finding someone who is a superstar or hiring someone who is an absolute nightmare. Number 5, and I speak from experience, Never hire friends or family to work for you. Now, I say this with caution because I have done that in my company, hired friends and family to work for me, and it worked out pretty good. I had good relationships with them then, and I have good relationships with them now. However, I've seen too many relationships fall apart because individuals hire family members or friends to work for them. Oftentimes, the line between friends and boss or family members and boss are blurred. And if somebody is not smart enough to realize that they're crossing the line while on the clock, while you are the one paying them, it's better not to hire them. It's better to actually have them find other situations or even help them find other situations. Or maybe work in another department within the company that you're working for, but never have a family member or friend working for you. It's one of the decisions that I've seen backfired on other entrepreneurs in small business sectors and mid-level managers who have done that and have actually regretted the process. And it's nothing bad about family members or friends. It's just that it is a very delicate line to balance or to walk on, and many people just don't have that insight. So to avoid any conflict, to avoid any kind of future discomfort, it's better to not hire family or friends to work in your department or your company if you're a small business owner. Number 6, I say to people all the time, meet the individual. I know we're living in the age of Zoom and we're living in the age of webcamming and meeting on conference calls, but if you are able to, because I know a lot of times companies are hiring in logistics that is in other states or other countries, but if you can meet individuals in person, there is nothing that speaks volume than actually being in a physical space with an individual. The Zoom call cannot do that for you. A telephone call cannot do that for you. But meeting somebody face to face, feeling the energetic field of the person, can be the key decision maker when deciding whether somebody is a right fit for your company or not. And something that I see happening all the time is number 7. Pay attention to references. And I'm talking about references from prior employers, because too often we're so eager to hire someone that this whole infrastructure of hiring falls through the gaps. The reference checks are important because prior employer can tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the indifferent, that you would need to decide whether this person is a liability for your company or an asset. So check your references. And I know that most human resources departments have a reference letter that's sent out, of sort of like a form letter that one checks off. And that is not good enough for me. It's important for you to speak to the hiring manager that this individual worked with before joining your company, because that individual can have a world of information to give to you. And I know the questions you ask are limited, like you're only supposed to ask what the person made in terms of an annual compensation or how many years the person worked for you. But there are other things you can ask and get an answer. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but oftentimes the answer could be in the lack of answer you get, right? So if you ask the person, would you hire this person again? And that person hesitates for a moment and then says, oh yes, of course we would. Then, that is kind of like I had to think about that one. Or if you ask the person something like, so what would you say the individual's work ethics were like? A lot of times managers can rattle that off and be very honest, or a lot of times they can be very kind of guarded because they know that there are legal ramifications in saying too much. But the person might say, oh, you know, she was a good worker, or he was a very diligent individual. He came to work on time and was very hardworking, and everybody loves him. Yeah. So sometimes you can get a little bit more than the yes or no answers, but it means speaking to that hiring manager. And the references can be a big difference between somebody being a superstar and somebody being a huge liability for your company. The bottom line, at the end of the day, you want to make the right hiring decision in the right frame of mind, in the right period of time. Because remember, like I said before, you have to jump on the candidate in terms of hiring while it's hot. Because that person is not just looking at your company as being the ideal company to work for, they're looking at other jobs as well. And if that person is a superstar that will be a good fit for you, don't hesitate. Make an offer as soon as possible, but make sure you've lined up your ducks in order, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ducks that I just mentioned, that we can make a decision and know that you're doing it with as much knowledge and confidence as possible. And hopefully you get somebody who will be an amazing addition to your department or your company moving forward. So until next time, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of upcoming shows. I'm Michael Robinson. Remember, think like an entrepreneur. You'll succeed in your career.